Okay, I'm going to start because we have an hour, and then I do want to have some time for a Q&A session as well if anyone wants to ask any questions about decision making, because I know it's a hit and miss. So some people really enjoy decision making, some people find it really difficult. So for people who do find it difficult, I'd want to just keep some time so that any questions they want to ask, I can answer them. So today we're going to be covering decision making on UCAT. If you guys came to my last session last Sunday, I did verbal reasoning. So this week it's going to be on decision making, and then next week will be quantitative reasoning, which will be taught by Ella, I think, and then the week after will be abstract reasoning. So a little bit about 6med. I know some of you who've attended most of these sessions already know, but just as a refresher to anyone attending for the first time, it's a company that was created by medical students for medical students, and we've taught over 10,000 students in the past 6 years. And the kind of events we run are for people who are interested in pursuing medicine. We do these surgery webinars from 2 to 3 every Sunday. And it's just to give you a little taster session into what medicine is like, and then do sessions like this where we take you through how to answer UCAT questions and stuff like that. We also offer specific UCAT and BMAT support. So we run day-long courses from 10 a.m. to 5:30 where you can come and go through all the different types of questions you can get in the UCAT and BMAT with one of our tutors, and we'll just help you and give you tips on how to answer questions in the different sections. So I did one of these teaching sessions yesterday, and it was really good fun, and lots of people enjoyed it. So if that's something you're considering, you can book it through the 6med website. We also offer personal statement support. So similar to the UCAT courses, we run day courses for personal statement, how to write it and how to edit your personal statement, what you need to include and not include. And then finally, we do interview preparation as well later on in the year, where we do mock MMIs and mock panel interviews, which you can come along and practice for. And that's much closer to the interviews during October, and it runs all the way through to January, February time. Just a little disclaimer for everyone. So we are offering an offer on our 6med resources. So we have 5% off any of our bundles just in July. So it's if you use the code 5OFF bundle July for the personal statement, UCAT, BMAT, or the interview bundles, if you wanted to purchase them, you do get 5% off. When are the personal statement webinars? So I just did a personal statement webinar early in July. There's another one in August and then another one in September. If you go onto our website on 6med and you click on the personal statement support bundle and you go over to the personal statement crash course, it should tell you what the dates are. I don't know the exact dates, but I definitely know there's going to be one session in August and then another one in September, right before your UCAS deadline in October. So we do have 2 more left if any of you wanted to attend those. Okay, so a little bit about me. Most of you may already know me if you've come to a few of these sessions. I'm a 4th year Bristol medical student. I've just finished my intercalation, and I'm quite passionate about teaching, which is why I do these sorts of Sunday teachings and teaching with 6med. And I do have an interest in surgery, and at the moment, whilst I'm doing medicine, but I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to do later on. It's just what I'm interested in at the moment now. So what are we actually going to cover today? So we're going to start off by just going a little overview over what decision making is for anyone who doesn't know, a little recap of how many questions, what's the time and things like that. And then I'll go through a few of my main top tips for approaching decision-making questions. And then we'll run through some practice questions where you guys have a go at answering different decision-making questions under timed conditions. And then we'll also have a short Q&A at the end. So can we access the webinar we missed anywhere? I don't know. I think you need to have attended in order to be able to access it, but I'm not sure. I think email one of the 6med people, and so probably Barbara or Tyler, whoever emails you guys with these events. If you contact them, you should be able to ask them whether you're able to access the recordings. I'm sure you can, because most of these sessions are free. So I think you should be able to access them even if you've missed them, but just double check with them by email. So just a little bit of housekeeping. I try to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So type your answers into the chat box. And if you have any questions, as you guys are already doing, keep posting them in the chat during the session. And then I'll either answer them as I go or answer them at the end during the Q&A. And just make sure, I think most of you are muted, but just if you haven't, just double check that you're muted so that it's not disrupting the session. Okay. Moving on, last week's webinar was sent recordings via email. Oh, thank you, Lily, thanks for that information. So if it's sent via email, and if you do want access to it, Theodora, if you didn't attend it last week, maybe just email one of the 6med admin people who normally email you, and hopefully you should get a copy of that. On a scale of 1 to 4, okay, so if you guys can just type it into the chat on a scale of 1 to 4, how do you feel about decision making? Do you feel quite confident, or you can just type in one of the numbers, or do you feel not as confident? If you just type it into the chat quickly. This is just a way of for you guys to see how well you've done over the session, and it's also a way for me to note like how you enjoyed the session. Was it helpful or not? It's a bit of feedback for me as well. Okay, most people flit in between 2s and 3s. Okay, Elizabeth said 2, and I struggle with probability and the geometry equations. Okay, so we'll go through some of this today, so hopefully that should help you. Right. So the main aims from the session is to help you understand the types of decision-making questions you may get, and also to practice decision-making questions as a group together today. So what is decision making? It's basically a set of questions to assess your problem solving ability. You get 29 questions in total to complete in 32 minutes. So you have about 40 to 45 seconds per question, I would say. Some of the questions you definitely use less time than others, but it's just about being really tactical and using the techniques I teach you during this session in order to be able to answer all the questions in the time that you're given, and still have a little bit of extra time to be able to go back and answer the questions that you weren't so sure of. So the different types of with decision making, most people actually are okay with it. The thing that people don't like about decision making is that you can get so many different types of questions. So what you can get is syllogisms, which are sort of word puzzles, and then you have to figure out whether you agree with the conclusion or disagree with the conclusion. Then you also have logic puzzles where you get given lots of information and you sort of have to try and piece it together and then decide what the answer is. So I'll go over some of those questions. Venn diagrams, a lot of people hate. It's really a love-hate thing. So either some people like Venn diagrams or they don't like it at all. Once you sort of understand how to process the information that's been given to you, they're relatively straightforward to draw and get your answer from. So I will teach you how to do those questions. Probability questions, relatively easy, basic GCSE maths. So I'll go through a few techniques on how to answer those. Interpreting information and recognizing assumptions are also relatively straightforward, but you just need to be very careful with your wording and make sure that you're not making those assumptions. So with decision making and verbal reasoning, my main rule for everyone is don't make assumptions and don't try and use prior knowledge, because they're basically asking you to use what you've been given in the question. They don't want you to use your previous knowledge on this topic. They want you to use the information that you've been given there and then. So that's why you shouldn't make assumptions based on your prior knowledge. So when you're approaching decision making, the main tips that I can give is use your whiteboard. So you will be given a small whiteboard at the start of your UCAT exam. The main sections you will be using your whiteboard for is decision making, quantitative reasoning. So those are the only two where you'll need a whiteboard. The second thing is write down key information on that whiteboard in a code form. Make sure you don't skim the text. So I know with verbal reasoning, my main tip was find your keywords in the statement and then scan in the text and skim read the text. Don't read the whole text. With decision making, though, you only get small pieces of information, like a few sentences. So they expect you to read all that information to be able to answer the question. So with decision making, it's the opposite to verbal reasoning. You should not be skimming the text. You need to learn all the information before you answer the questions. And as I said before, make no assumptions. Okay. So we're going to jump straight into practice, and we've got 40 seconds per question. But because we've got different types of questions, as I've shown here, we're going to be going through each type of question one by one. So we've covered all our bases. So now, syllogisms, I'm going to make you guys do the question, and then I'm going to, and then I'm going to go through how you would approach this. So 40 seconds for this question, starting from now. 10 seconds left. So try and get your answers in. Just keep them in your head for now, and then you can post them in the chat later on. Okay, that's time. So the question is saying, all soft drinks are sweet and sweet beverages are artificially colored. Circle yes if the conclusion follows and no if it doesn't follow. So in my head, what I'd start by doing is I would sort of say all soft drinks equal sweet, sweet beverages equal artificially colored. So that will be my little code that I write on my whiteboard on the side. Then for the first one, we've got the conclusion as all soft drinks are artificially colored. So we know that all soft drinks are sweet and sweet beverages are artificially colored. So for this first conclusion, do we agree with it or do we disagree? Yes or no? What do we think, guys? If you put it in the chat. Most people saying yes, which looks promising. So well done. The answer is yes, because we've been told that all soft drinks are sweet. And we know that because these sweet drinks, because soft drinks are sweet and sweet beverages are artificially colored, therefore all soft drinks must be artificially colored. So we do agree with the conclusion. If you could stick to typing the answers in the chat rather than in the Q&A. And the question that's been posted in the Q&A, I will answer in a minute once I finish this question. So just give me 2 seconds. Next one, some red coloured soft drinks are sour. What do we think? Can we agree with this conclusion or disagree? No, perfect. Good. Good. We can't make although we know that soft drinks are sweet and sweet beverages are artificially coloured, we can't make, because we haven't been given the information about sour soft drinks, we can't really agree with that conclusion. We can't make the assumption. Next one, some sweet beverages are soft drinks. What do we think? We've got yes. Okay, let's have a look. So that is true, because we know all soft drinks which are sweet, and then those sweet beverages are artificially coloured. And we know that some of these sweet beverages are soft drinks because we've already been given that information. So well done. Next one, all green beverages are sweet. What do we think? No, yeah, because we don't know if this green beverage is a soft drink. We don't know that. So no. And then next, final one, some soft drinks are naturally coloured. What do we think? Okay, we've got lots of no's coming in. Let's have a look. So that's the right answer. Well done. So it's relatively straightforward once you've formed a sort of code for your syllogisms and you answer it that way. So well done. So that's relatively easy. If I go back actually, so does everyone understand how I sort of answer this question? Everyone happy with syllogisms? Good. Okay. Now, before I move on to the next one, I'm just going to answer the question somebody's asked. With questions where they use statements like Bob bought fewer chairs than Alex, could that include zero, i.e. Bob may have bought 0 chairs, as I recently saw a decision-making question where 0 was not considered. So I would say if they say fewer, then it's between 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. I wouldn't consider 0, because then they would just give something like Bob bought no chairs compared to Alex. Bob bought no chairs, whereas Alex bought X amount of chairs. I think it wouldn't include 0. I think it would have only include like between 1 to 3. That's what if the definition of the word fewer, I would say, is between 1 to 3 of anything that they're talking about. Okay, chat. Okay, perfect. Just people responding. Will you be covering shape equations? Example, circle plus circle equals rectangle plus square. I haven't covered that. I haven't got a set of questions like that in mind. I've just gone off what 6med has given me in terms of the different types of questions. But if you, at the end of the session, if you want to bring up a question, if you want to direct me to one of those questions, I'll try and find it, and then we can work through it together if you want during the Q&A. But usually I don't see many of those question decision making. So yeah, we'll have a look at the end anyway. Anyway, moving on. So logic puzzles. If I give you guys again 45 seconds, so 45 seconds this time rather than 40, because we do have a little bit more information to take in. So 45 seconds starting from now, if you try and answer this question. Ten seconds left. And that's time. So what do we think the answer is? If everyone can put in the answer first. Okay, Maria says Joey, didn't have a whiteboard, ran out of time. Okay, 2 people saying Joey, other people not so sure. Let's have a look. Didn't have a whiteboard. If you do want to, for these decision-making questions, I probably should have said earlier, if you get a piece of paper and a pen just for these questions, because some of them you might have to write a little bit more information. We've got a mix now, we've got Joey, but we've got a few Chandlers as well. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got, in a Formula One race, there are 6 people competing. Ross finishes last after starting the race 1 position higher. Okay, even before I start, I wouldn't read the whole thing and then go back to the beginning and try and figure out who ended up in 4th place. So what I would do is, as I'm reading it, I would start drawing a little table. So hopefully a little table should be up. So we've got, just ignore the F in 1st place for Phoebe for now. So what I would do on your whiteboard is just draw a little table, like a grid like this, on the bottom right here. That's what I would start off with on a whiteboard. And we've been told in a Formula One race, there are 6 people competing. So I've got my 6 individuals here: Ross, Rachel, Monica, Joey, Chandler, and Phoebe. And then I've got the first piece of information in the first sentence saying, Ross finishes last after starting the race 1 position higher, which means Ross, and I'm going to use the word S for start and F for finish. So Ross finishes last. So where Ross is, I'm just going to put F in number 6, which is there. And then he started the race 1 position higher. So he must have started 5th. So there we go. He started in 5th position. Then moving on to the next person, Rachel finishes in the position that Monica started the race on. Now, we don't know when Monica started. So as a result, I'm just going to park this information in the back of my head. I'm not going to think about it for the moment. Next one, Joey finishes one place behind Chandler. Again, I don't know when Chandler finished. So for the moment, I don't know that piece of information. But we know that Chandler started in second place. So for Chandler, I would put S in second, just there. Then we've got Monica started the race ahead of Chandler. Again, we don't know where, if Monica started the race ahead of Chandler and we know that Chandler started in second place, then Monica must have started first, just by logic. So she must have started first. But then she ended up one place ahead of Ross. So she finished one place ahead of Ross, which means she must have finished in fifth place. Everyone following me so far? Just say yes or no. Yes, good. Good. And then if we go on to the next one, Phoebe started fourth, but she finished ahead of Chandler. So we know that Phoebe started fourth. So if you put down fourth for them, and it's asking me who ended the race in fourth place. So now we have to go back and look at the information where I didn't really know how to answer it. So we know that Rachel finishes in the position Monica started on. Now we know that Monica started first. So Rachel must have finished first. Okay. Then we've got Joey finishes one place behind Chandler, who started in second place. We still don't know when Joey finished. Monica started the race ahead of Chandler. So we know she started first, but she ended up one place ahead of Ross. We know that information already. Phoebe started fourth, but finished ahead of Chandler. If Phoebe needs to finish ahead of Chandler and Joey finishes one place behind Chandler, then by logic, looking at where the other people finished, Chandler must have finished in third place just by logic. So because he has to have Phoebe before him and Joey after him. So we'd have Chandler in third place, Phoebe in fourth place. So by ruling things out, Joey must have been the person who finished in fourth place. So does everyone understand how I worked that logic puzzle out? So the answer is Joey. Yes, perfect. So ahead, Theodora, does mean before. So he finished ahead, meaning finished before. So yeah, the wording can be a bit confusing. Perfect. So that's how you do a logic puzzle. When you first look at them, they look really, really complicated because there's so much information and you feel like you don't know where to start. But once you break up the information and write down what you know and then try and figure out what you don't know, it makes life a lot easier. So hopefully everyone was able to understand. How are we meant to do all that in only 40 seconds? So it does come with practice and people do struggle in the beginning, but once you get used to drawing those tables and trying to understand that information, you will be able to do it in that time. If not, like for example, for syllogisms don't take as long as logic puzzles. So maybe you'll spend 30 seconds on that question, which means you have an extra 10 seconds for the logic puzzle. So you do have to be tactical with your time. Just because I've said 40 seconds, that is a sort of like a guidance timing, but it doesn't have to be exactly 40 seconds. I am only timing you guys just to give you an idea of what it would be like in the exam condition. Do we always draw a table for these types of questions? It's up to you. If you feel like tables are helpful, then you can. I usually do, because otherwise I forget the certain bits and pieces of information and then I put down the wrong answer. So for me, writing down stuff in a table makes it a lot easier because I'm more of a visual learner. But if you find it easier to not draw a table and you're still able to get to the right answer, it's up to you. That's your technique. Was it necessary to note their starting position as well? Not really, but just because sometimes they give you information like Rachel finishes in the position Monica started. It's just easier to have all that information written down. Can you just put a shortened version of a name and an S and F? Yeah, that's fine. Just for the purposes of the presentation, I've put down their full names, but you don't have to do that. Okay. Next one, Venn diagram. So this, I'm going to give you guys 45 seconds starting from now. Okay, 10 seconds left. I've got a few answers coming in already, which is good. Okay, that's time. Got loads of people saying A, which is good. Right, let's have a look at the answer. So it says a fragrance company have fragrances made up of the ingredients in the key below. Some fragrances only have one ingredient, whereas others are a mixture of ingredients. Based on the diagram, how many fragrances consisted of a mixture of bergamot, citrus, and sandalwood? Relatively easy. Most of you gave the answer before the 45 seconds. So this is what I mean. You might get a Venn diagram question, which is relatively easy, and then you get a logic puzzle, and you only spend about 20 seconds for this Venn diagram question, and then you'll have an easier, a harder logic puzzle question where you need more time. So just because I've said 40 seconds doesn't mean you have to spend 40 seconds per question. It is just for the purposes of this session, it's better when I time it like this, so then you get a good idea of what it's like. So yeah, so then you would look at mixture of bergamot, citrus, and sandalwood, where the overlap is. So bergamot is, you've got the triangle, and then you've got citrus as well, so where it overlaps with the heart. And what was the last one? Sandalwood, which was the rectangle. So yes, it would be 15, which is A. So well done. Flicking back actually, so that one, I think there was a question. I struggled with this one. Do you count the overlap? Yeah, so where all three of the shapes overlap, that's the one you'd be looking at. So if I get my laser pointer out to make it a little bit easier, just 2 seconds, bear with me. So you've got the heart, which is the citrus. So we're going to have to look at this area, and it overlaps with this rectangle, which overlaps here, and it overlaps with a triangle. So you're looking at this number specifically here, 15. So these are the fragrances which contain a mixture of bergamot, citrus, and sandalwood, these 15. Does that make sense, Lulu? Yes, happy with that? Perfect. So someone's asked something in the Q&A. How many logic puzzles would come up in one set of decision making? It varies. You probably have 3-ish, I would say 2 to 3, because you've got 29 questions in total. They need to do sort of an even number of most of them. You probably will get 3, I would say actually 3 to 4 logic puzzles. Some of the logic puzzles will be a lot easier than the other ones. So yeah, I would say about 3 to 4. Okay, 45 seconds for this question. It's a probability question starting from now. If anyone's not familiar with cards, like a deck of cards or something, just for reference, there it says in brackets, there's 13 cards in each suit, just for your reference. Okay, 10 seconds left. And that's time. Okay, what are we thinking for answers? Not sure about this one, maybe A. Okay, 2 people saying A, 1 person saying D, if you're not too sure. Okay, let's do this one together if people are struggling. So we've got Jacob's playing a card game with a standard deck of 52 cards, 13 cards of each suit. He's the first to draw a card and hopes it will either be an ace or a black card. Is the chance for Jacob to draw either an ace or a black card greater than a half? Now, the key word in this question is the word or. And does anyone, before I explain the answer, does anyone know the and the or rule in probability? And if you do, can you explain it? Yeah, multiply if it's or, no. So I think a few people mixing it up. So if it's and, you multiply. If it's or, you add. So that's how you do it. Perfect. good. I think most people have got that. Someone said, I need to revise it. I haven't done it since GCSE. No, completely understand. I didn't take A-level maths. So it had been a year out of GCSE maths and having done maths in general. So for me, I did have to go and revise a little bit for probability stuff, especially in quantitative reasoning where they do bring up a lot of probability. So completely understandable, don't worry. It's simple rules. So I'll just type it in the chat for everyone. So if it says and, then you have to multiply the two numbers. And if it's or, then you add the two numbers. So let's go over it. Let's start off. So if you've got 52 cards in a deck, in a standard deck, and we know that we've got 13 cards in each suit. We know ace cards, there are 4 ace cards in any deck. So this does involve a little bit of card knowledge. So you've got 4 ace cards, and then you've got half of your cards will be black cards, and 2 of those ace cards will be black cards. So let me explain it a little bit so that it's a bit more, let me break it down a bit more so it's not as confusing. So the answer is B. So the chance to draw an ace or a black card is 7 out of 13. Let me try and explain it. So in total, you have 26 black cards and you have 26 red cards in any deck. So half of your 52 cards are black cards. In total, you have 4 aces in your entire deck. And remember that 2 of these aces are black, they're also black, and 2 of the other aces are red. So those are the cards you've got. So the question is asking you, is the chance for Jacob to draw either an ace or a black card greater than a half? So we now know that if there's 26 black cards in total, plus an additional 2 black aces. So we've got 26 plus 2, so 28 out of 52 cards are black. And the chances of a black or an ace, therefore, must be 7 out of 13, because if you simplify this fraction, 28 over 52, and divide it, basically, you get 7 over 13. We know that 7 over 13 is greater than a half. So as a result, the answer is B. So yes, the chance to draw an ace or a black card is 7 over 13. Do you guys get that? The question says ace or black card, not a black ace. So but a black card could be an ace card as well, because it's a black card, if you know what I mean. I'm a bit confused, because how did you know how many black cards and aces there are? So in any deck, when you're playing cards, half of your cards are black and half of your cards are red. So it is a little bit of card knowledge. So I understand it's a bit of a harder question, but it is just something that I don't know if they would give that information necessarily, but they might expect you to know. With this question, could you eliminate A as it's not greater than half? No, because, actually, yes, you're right. You can eliminate that one. So A, you can eliminate immediately. Yeah, that makes sense. So when you say there are 4 aces, is that part of the total cards? That is part of the total cards, yes. And eliminate C as it's greater than half. Yeah, again, same thing. So if you don't know anything about cards, you can't answer it. It is a bit confusing, but you can learn it now, can't you, because of this question. So now you know that there's 26 black cards, 26 red cards in any deck of cards, and you know that there are 4 aces. So yeah, you've got the information now. It was a difficult question, but I put it in there deliberately because when I was practicing for my UCAT, I got a question like this. And like you guys, I didn't have knowledge about aces and, you know, in general, standard deck of 52 cards. So it is something you just learn as you go. If 2 aces are all black, what are the other 2 colors? Red, because in a deck you have black cards or red cards. So 4 aces, 2 of which are black all the time. Yes, yeah, because it does say standard deck of cards as well. Okay, next question, 45 seconds. You probably don't actually even need all of the 45 seconds, but I'll give you 45 seconds for this question. Should be relatively easy. 10 seconds left, everyone. And that's time. So what are we thinking for answers? Okay, most people saying D, good. Let's have a look. So the question is asking you, should all public payphones be removed to save taxpayers money? So with these questions, the way to approach them are very, very similar to how you would approach verbal reasoning. So what I mean by that is you'd find keywords in that question. So you would look for, my keyword would probably be public payphone, removed, and then taxpayers money. And then what I would do is you're trying to match up this question with the best argument in this in the 4 options here. So number 1, it says, yes, the latest usage reports show that very few calls are placed in a fiscal year. So there's nothing really about a fiscal year, and there's nothing really about how many calls are placed. So I don't think this is that great of an argument in response to this question. So I would eliminate A. B, yes, the tax revenue due to profits from the few calls made on public phone calls is minimal. Again, they do talk about tax revenue, and they do talk about the number of calls on public phones. So it does sort of match with this question, but let's just have a look at C and D as well. So C, no, red phone booths are an iconic image and shouldn't be removed. Again, nothing about red phone booths really, and nothing about public opinion about it being an iconic image. So that wouldn't be a good answer to this question. So C would be no. And then the last one, D. No, the public payphones are run by private businesses at no cost to taxpayers. So this directly addresses the cost to taxpayers. So talking about saving taxpayers money here. And it also addresses the fact that public payphones are run by private businesses. So it addresses the first part of the question as well. So for me, it's between B and D. And I think a few of you, I think one person said B. I can't remember. Most people saying D. I do agree with D because it directly speaks about it addresses the taxpayers, and it addresses public payphones as well. So the answer is D. Well done, everyone. So the main thing with this is identifying your keywords and then trying to match up those keywords with the right argument, the one that fits it closely, basically. And D in this case was the one that did. B probably was a close second, but because it doesn't directly speak about the cost of taxpayers, we would prefer D as opposed to B. If the questions are quite difficult, do you recommend skipping it? So yeah, so if they are really difficult for you to get your head around, I would say put down an answer anyway, like guess, make an educated guess about what you think the answer is, flag the question, skip it, and come back to it later. The reason why I tell all students to put down an answer anyway is in case you run out of time, which means that at least if you put down an answer, you're giving yourself a 25% chance of getting it right, even if you have guessed it completely. But if you don't put anything down, then you're missing an opportunity to have possibly got it right, even if it would have been through a guess. So yeah, that I would say definitely put down an answer, skip it, and then come back to it later if you have time. Okay. So those are all the different types of questions. I know someone mentioned about the circle and circle equals rectangle and square kind of thing. So that probably will come under logic puzzles, that type of question. And I think with more and more practice, you guys will get quite good at it. In general, most of the questions you were getting it right. It's just the timing that a lot of you are struggling with. So I would try and say, do all your questions under timed conditions so that you get confident answering those questions within the limited time that you're being given in the UCAT. So the main tips for decision making, just to summarize, as I said before, try not to make any assumptions. With syllogisms and things like that, create a code. And with logic puzzles, use your whiteboard because it really does make your life easier and make sure you don't forget important bits of information that they've given in a long piece of a long paragraph, basically. How many hours a day should we practice? Well, I would say it's more about the quality rather than the quantity. So I think maybe spend 1 hour on a certain number of questions that if you decided to do decision making one day, pick a set of like 20 or 30 questions and then do them in that hour. And the most of the time you're practicing doing the questions, but most of your time will probably be spent on looking at the questions that you've done wrong looking at the questions that you've done wrong and spending lots of time trying to understand why you went wrong and why the answer is something else, because that you'll see more progress when you spend time actually looking at where you went wrong rather than thinking about how many questions a day you need to be doing. So it will vary from person to person. If you're quite good at that section, you'll probably get through loads of questions per day and you'll feel fine and you won't get many of them wrong. But I would say it's not about how many questions a day you do, it's about the quality. So say if you do 10 questions and you get 5 of them wrong, spending about probably 10 minutes per question that you got wrong to try and understand where you went wrong, and then maybe a week later doing the same question and seeing if you get it right. So that's probably what's going to improve your UCAT score, rather than putting a goal at like you need to do a certain number of questions a day. So yeah, I think that's answered the next question as well. When should we start preparing? So you're saying 4 months prior. Are you a year 12 student or are you a year 11 student? If you could just give me a little bit of context. I would probably say you should start preparing in the summer of your year 12, as most of you have done. And it would probably be, I would say about 6 to 8 weeks of preparation is needed. I actually think if you do too much preparation, you end up burning yourself out and your scores actually go down. So doing preparation for 4 months or something like that is probably not a good idea. I would actually say you just need about 6 to 8 weeks. So 2 months is enough, really. Which section did you find hard when you were revising for the UCAT? My hardest section was abstract reasoning, because I hadn't really done questions like that before. And it was like recognizing patterns was really hard for me. And I didn't like the fact that you only had 15 seconds per question. So that really panicked me a lot. But I think that what I did with abstract reasoning was I wrote down all the types of patterns that you can find and created a little acronym for myself. So whenever I was looking at the abstract reasoning tiles, I would think, I would ask myself, is this pattern size, is it shape, and then sort of rule it out. Is it position, is it number, or is it shading? And then I would go from there. And so I just have a set of patterns in my head and I try and look for them. And that is what helped me with that section. Okay, so year 11 student, I would say probably don't start revising until summer of year 12. You need about 8 weeks of revision. So if you book your UCAT test for the end of August, you probably start revising in July, and that's it. That should be enough. When do you recommend start doing timed practice and mocks? Okay, so this is a good question. I did bring this up in last week's session. So I would say do a mock exam before you start doing any UCAT preparation. So that's like going to be your baseline. So then you know what you've done well in without even doing any practice. You know which sections you're good at and which sections you're not, what you need more work on. It might be a little bit hard hitting in the beginning because you might do badly in a lot of them, but it doesn't matter because you haven't done any practice. So you need to be fair on yourself and you need to remind yourself that you haven't done any practice. So the scores are probably going to be bad. That doesn't matter at all. It's a baseline for you to then work on and get better and better. And then probably I'd say every 3 weeks leading up to your exam, or every 2 weeks leading up to your exam, on the Saturday or the Sunday of that week, I would do a mock exam. And I would actually recommend doing that mock exam in your local library computer, because it mimics the environment that you will be in your official UCAT exam as well. So it'll be quiet, but there will be a little bit of background noise. And that's how the exam will also be, because there'll be people going in and out, because the exams are in a driving test center. So some people might be doing driving theory test exams, and some people might be doing the UCAT exam, and some people might be doing other exams for other types of degrees as well. Like I think for I think LNAT or something, or that might be a written paper, I'm not sure, but they do have other exams for other subjects at university, which are going on there as well. So there'll be people getting up, walking in, walking out, and you might hear whispering. So from the person who's sort of giving them a little induction about the computer and the Pearson Test Center. So you have to get used to that slight background noise. It's not like complete silence at all. So I would say do those mock exams in those conditions in your local library. Okay, that's done. If you don't mind, please could you share your abstract reasoning acronym? Yes, so if I could type the answer actually, or if I type the answer, I don't know if everybody would be able to see it. So I'm just going to say it. So it's SSSPN. So size, is it size? That's the pattern. The second S is shape. So do you have certain types of shapes in set A versus set B? And then we've got shading. So different types of shading. Is it checkerboarded or is it gray shading or black versus white shading? And then you've got P for position. Where in the tile is it? Is it in the corners, the shapes, or is it in the center? Is that the pattern? And number. So with number, there's lots of subcategories. So it could be number of sides. So is it even number of sides or odd number of sides, or is it a certain number of sides? And then you've got a number of acute angles or number of obtuse angles or number of right angles. Is that the pattern? And then it could be the number of objects you have within the tile. So things like that. That's the acronym. So SSSPN: shape, size, shading, position, number. So yeah. When should you start BMAT, or should you revise alongside the UCAT? So I know the BMAT test date has been moved up now to October or something like that. So it's sort of overlaps with the UCAT a little bit now. I would say you can revise for it together, because BMAT is completely different in that it's based on your biology, chemistry, physics, maths, and essay knowledge from GCSE. So I think that should be relatively, I actually think BMAT may be a bit easier than UCAT, because UCAT is an aptitude test, whereas BMAT is knowledge that you've learned in GCSE and you just need to go over it and you can actually revise for it. Whereas with UCAT, you need to practice the questions. You can't really revise from a textbook for it. You have to do the questions. So I think maybe if you have your UCAT exam earlier, put more focus on it, and then with your BMAT, maybe break it into smaller chunks and revise it for a longer period of time, because you actually have content to revise from for that. How would you recommend splitting between UCAT and BMAT, or would you recommend only prepping for one? So for me, I only did the UCAT because I didn't want to apply to any of the BMAT universities. I wanted to focus on one, and then I wanted to focus on my A levels. So I did UCAT only. I know a lot of people who did both. And I would say it depends on when your test dates are. And with BMAT, I think you can probably take a bit longer to revise for, because it's a certain test date, isn't it? Whereas with the UCAT, it's you deciding when you want to do it. So I would sort of prioritize UCAT if it's earlier on, and then do a bit of BMAT every day as well. But your main focus should be UCAT. Tips for preparing for UCAT in 2 weeks: do a few mock exams, then keep looking at which sections you're not so good at, spend a bit more time on those ones, but make sure you don't neglect your easier sections. And I think just try and if you go on the UCAT website, there's a little tutorial which teaches you how to use shortcuts and stuff to save time. So with your keyboard, to go to the next question and stuff, rather than dragging the mouse along the screen to click to next, there are shorthand forms of like moving to the next question or flagging questions or going to the previous question. So try and look over those kind of things. What if they don't give us a whiteboard? Should we ask for a paper? They will always give you a whiteboard. It's a rule for the UCAT exam that they do give you a whiteboard. So if they don't give you one, ask for one. Can you please tell me about University of Bristol? Does this university require high UCAT scores, as I'm interested? Varies year on year. The year I applied, they had 20% weighting on UCAT and 50% on personal statement, and then the rest of the 30% on your predicted A-level grades. But then after my year, they changed it. So I applied for the 2018 year. And then for 2019 to 2020 year, they changed it so that it was 50% weighting on BMAT. And I think it's not BMAT, sorry, UCAT. So it stayed the same for the last few years. So I think it's 50% weighting. But I think it's probably worth going and checking on their medical school website, on the University of Bristol website, because it will tell you how much weighting they put on it for this year. Always worth double checking because it might change this year. Did you practice with a computer? Because some people say the layout is different compared to laptops, so it helps you get quicker typing in answers for quantitative reasoning. Yes, do not practice with laptops. Laptops are not the same. And also you do have a mouse to deal with as well, and it can really throw you off on the last day. So I practiced on, I used my sister's desktop. So I probably, if you have a desktop at home, use that. If not, use your school one or use your local library one. I would practice on a computer desktop because it is really different to using a laptop. How long do you need for BMAT? Probably about the same time. I'd say 2 months, 2.5 months. But I actually think everyone should feel a bit more confident about BMAT more so than UCAT, only because I think that you guys have already revised for it for your GCSE exams, so it's fresh in your head. You're studying the same sort of stuff in year 12, so actually you should feel a bit more confident about it. Will you be doing more webinars on other sections? Good question. So the next week's session is quantitative reasoning. I'm not doing that one. Ella is, if you've met her. She'll be doing that one. She's quite good as well. And then we've got abstract reasoning, which I think Ella's doing again. And then I'm doing the last one. I'm doing situational judgment, which will be mid-August. So I'll be doing that one. So no more from me for the next two, but then the last one I am doing it. Do you have any tips for when you're in the exam center and taking the test? Oh yeah, so I think try and stay as calm as you can. I know it's really difficult when you're in the test center, but try and stay as calm as you can. Use your whiteboard. Some people, for some reason, I don't know why they do it, they just neglect using the whiteboard. But I think it's really stupid because you've got it right there and you can jot down notes as you go. Definitely use the whiteboard. And I would also say, I don't know if you're allowed water in there, but I would say you get lockers just before you go into the test center. So if you take some water with you and if you take a snack or something, quickly have the snack before you go in for your UCAT exam, or and have a small drink. And then when you come back out while you're waiting for your results, do the same, have a snack ready. And yeah, and just those are the kind of tips I'd sort of give. The other thing is in between sections, when you have that 1 minute of reading time, it's literally reading the instructions, which you'll probably be so familiar with by the time you get to the exam, you won't have to read the instructions. Try and look away from the computer, maybe look down at your whiteboard or something, just to give your eyes a bit of a rest. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Do you think mental maths is extremely important in the UCAT exam, as I've heard the calculator is quite hard to use? With all your quantitative reasoning questions, I would say start using the calculator from the first time you practice doing those questions. You do have to use the calculator sometimes, like you have no choice, because you can't really do some difficult equations like 2 pi r squared and working those kind of calculations out. It's actually easier using the online calculator than it is to try and work it all out yourself. Yeah, I would say use the Pearson calculator as much as you can, but try and train yourself to do a lot of it in your head. But then there is the thing where, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I did GCSE maths, I would, even if it was 2 + 2 or 1 + 1, I'd still get us to doubt myself and I'd need to double check it on a calculator. So do get used to using the calculator, and yeah, it should be okay. But it is an annoying calculator because it's the most basic one that you can get and you can't really do fractions or anything on it. But I think definitely try and get used to it. And if you can do it in your head, there are some of the calculations, and if you're confident in them, feel free to do that as well. That's fine. Is it okay to practice using a laptop screen, but with a desktop keyboard and mouse? Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think that's fine. Which GCSE maths topic do you suggest going over for quantitative reasoning, decision making? Probability, geometry. What I mean by that is like perimeter, areas, volume of a sphere, remembering those formulas, because they don't give you those. And then what was the other one? Percentage increase, percentage decrease, percentage change. Remembering that calculation, distance, speed, time formula, if you remember that one. I think those are the main ones to go over. Yeah, those are the main ones. And then conversions. So 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. How do you do conversions, ratios and proportions? So that, if you just go over it again, just have a little run through. That was quite useful. I heard they now have online notebook instead of whiteboards. Ah, interesting. I didn't know that. If they do that, then try and practice using that online notebook when you're doing your UCAT practice questions, so that you get used to it. Do you still get a whiteboard? I'm not too sure. I think it might be worth double checking on the UCAT website. If they do have the online notebook, then start using that as well for your practice. You mentioned not skim reading, but if there's something you don't understand, do you think it's better to skip for decision making? I think still put down an answer and then come back to it. More specifically about the last type we did today. For example, I didn't understand answer B. I will come back to that question, Theodora, at the end. I'll just answer the remaining questions and come back to that one. Do we need to know about rotational symmetry? Ooh. Refresh my memory. What is rotational symmetry? Do we need to know how to calculate tax and discount in quantitative reasoning? No, they'll probably give you, if they do want you to do that calculation, they'll probably give you a formula or something to use. Should we learn times table up to 25? Maybe up to, it can be useful, but at the same time, you do have a calculator there. So I don't know if it's worth spending time doing that, especially if you want to spend your time practicing questions and then trying to understand where you went wrong or where you did well. Up to 25, maybe a bit too much. Maybe up to 15 probably is okay. The rest of them, just use your calculator, it's fine. Online notebooks not available in 2022. Okay, so it's probably whiteboard then. Where can I access the online notebook when using Medentry, but I haven't come across it? If anybody else can answer that question, feel free to, because I'm not too sure about this online notebook. Can you give me advice about pie chart questions? Pie chart questions probably be covered next week in the quantitative reasoning, so definitely ask Ella about that. But what I can say is just make sure you read the question properly and write down the main points about it. So yeah, that's all I can say. I don't know too much about them, so it's probably worth asking Ella next week. Rotational symmetry is when you turn a shape around and it looks the same. So I think if it looks the same when you turn it a certain number of times, interesting. That might be for abstract reasoning. It might be one of the patterns, one of the new patterns. I'm not too sure. So worth asking Ella about it. And yeah, I think it might be one of those difficult patterns that comes up. Where can we find free mocks if you know? I'm not too sure, but if other people who are on this chat who use free mock UCAT ones, if you could answer that question for me. One thing I would say is there's the UCAT official website, so you could probably access through there. Oh yeah, someone's got Past Medicine. Oh, okay, but I didn't know Past Medicine did UCAT stuff as well, so I use it for my medical school exams. So if they do that for that, they're quite a good company, so that one's really good as well. I've got loads of questions coming in. Where can I access the online notebook? I'm using Medentry. So yeah, so I think that's been answered. Just got under 4 weeks until UCAT, but no mocks yet and still learning content. Any advice or a timetable? It depends what your weakest ones are. So if you're really struggling with abstract reasoning or quantitative reasoning, for example, maybe spending more time on that, doing like 1 to 2 hours a day of revision, and then in the morning and then in the evening doing a mock exam or something like that. That might probably be useful. I'd say start doing mock exams now, so that you get an idea of what the full exam is like. Should we give our centre a call to ask if they give whiteboards? Yeah, probably a good idea, just to double check, yeah, because it might vary depending on COVID regulations as well. Maybe they don't want to give out whiteboards anymore. I don't know what the deal is at the moment, so probably worth ringing them and asking. It probably won't do any harm if you call them up. So yeah, feel free to do that. Past medicine has free ones, okay. Or Medic Mind, someone has said as well, Theodora, if you wanted to note that down, which is also free. Thanks, Ishan, for that. How long is this webinar? So it's supposed to be an hour, so it's supposed to finish now. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them and I'll answer them. I'll probably stay on for another 5 minutes. Okay, that was all the Q&A questions. What's in the chat? Okay, let's have a look. So it was shape, shade, size, position, and number. Those are the 5 things. Perfect. Where's the BMAT? Isn't it in early November? It was in early November, but the dates have now changed. So I think it's mid-October. So please have a look on the website. Yeah, someone said October 18th this year. It has changed. Yeah. Are there more decision-making questions? Yeah, so they're not for today, but there will be for if you guys go online, you can have a look at that. If you buy the UCAT bundle from 6med, we have loads of questions on there to practice as well. Okay. Can you please tell me about your experience in medicine in the University of Bristol? Yeah, of course. So I'll just give you an overview of what we've done so far. So I'm a 4th year student. So I've done 3 years of medical school at Bristol. And then this last year, so 2021 to 2022, I've been at Imperial College London, and I've done research for the year. So I've done intercalation, if you know what that is. It's where you take a year out and you either do a bachelor's or a master's in a topic that you really enjoy. So I did mine on endocrinology at Imperial because I wanted to have a year out of Bristol, and I also wanted to experience what university was like in London. So I applied to that one. So that's what I've been doing this year. And then I have 2 more years left of medicine. So I'm going back to Bristol this September for my last 2 years. So yeah, that's the structure of it. So after 3rd year, you get the choice of intercalating, or you don't have to intercalate and you just move straight on to year 4. The way it runs in 1st and 2nd year, you have, if I go through a week in general, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, you have lectures, and Monday mornings, you have something called CBL, or case-based learning, where you meet in the afternoon with your group, and it's 10 people per group, and you discuss a case based on what you're learning in lectures, and then you basically divide the topics up and then you research, each person researches a specific topic, and then you all come back on Friday, and you have Friday morning CBL, where you teach each other about what you've learned basically over the week, and then you close the case. So that's what you do. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, you have CBL plus lectures. And then Tuesday afternoons are usually labs, where you have scientific labs, basically, where you do experiments and things like that, but they're medical based. So you learn about tissues and like different types of drugs and things like that. And then Thursday mornings, we have something called effective consulting, where we have to practice communication skills, and we practice how we would speak to patients and how we would ask them questions about the conditions they have. And then you do that with your groups. And then in the afternoon, you go away to either GP placement or hospital placement, and you practice the skills you learn in the morning. So that's how it runs. And so that's a typical week in 1st and 2nd year. And then when you get to 3rd year, you get placements. So for the first half of the year, I was in Swindon Hospital. And then for the second half of the year, I was in Bristol Hospital. So when I was in Swindon, I was doing sort of basic medicine. So about heart, lungs, gastrointestinal system, and the brain and things like that. So you do 2 weeks per placement, and you're in Swindon for that. And then every Wednesday you have GP placement. And then the second half of the year runs the same way, but then you do more acute specialties like A&E, and then you do a bit of surgery as well. And then again, every Tuesdays is GP. Every other Tuesday, sorry. So every fortnight you have a GP placement the whole day. So yeah, that's how it runs. And then fourth and fifth year run the same way as well, and you're in placement the whole time, and you don't have any lectures. You learn in the hospital, you learn on the wards, and then you still have CBL, case-based learning. So that's how it runs for the last 3 years, because the last 3 years are fully clinical, whereas the first 2 years are integrated. Is there also intercalation in dentistry? I think so. I can't remember. I can double check for you really quickly now, but I think you do intercalate as well. Let me have a look. You do. So you do have intercalation in dentistry as well, if that's something you're considering. Okay. Someone said, having to take my exam at 9 a.m. I regret booking it at this time. However, all the other slots were taken. How do I prepare to do my exam so early? For example, how do I have a good mindset and prepare? Maybe one of the things you could do is like waking up early and pretending like it was your UCAT day a few days beforehand and doing a mock exam, but doing it in the conditions that you would expect to do it in the official UCAT exam. So you get used to waking up that early, and you get used to a short morning routine just for the exam and train your brain that way. That could help a bit. I had my exam at 9 a.m. as well. So what I used to do was what I've just advised you. So I would wake up early, like it's about 7ish, and have breakfast, do what I do normally in the morning, and then I would do my exam at 9 a.m. as if I was doing the official UCAT exam. So it just trains your brain to get used to that time. So I'd say that's probably what could help with your mindset. What should I learn from my work experience at a mental health hospital? You could probably learn loads about communication skills, how they deal with different mental health conditions. You can learn about how they section people. So sectioning is putting them in mental health care so that they don't go and harm themselves, and they're monitored all the time. So you can learn about what sectioning is, and you can learn about the Mental Health Act. So I think ask the people who are working there about sectioning, ask them about Mental Health Act, ask them about Mental Capacity Act. So those are all really important things that you learn in medical school. But if you're doing that for work experience, you can get a lot out of it by asking them questions on it. So definitely speak to them about that, and that could probably be really useful. So yeah, you could learn a lot from that, and you can learn general communication skills. And that's probably a really good work experience to do, because not a lot of people do it at a mental health hospital. Most people just do it at normal hospitals and stuff like that. So that could help you stand out as well if you talk about it in your personal statement. Also, if the place where you did work experience at haven't given you a reference, will the medical school still believe that you did it there? Yeah, I think it should be fine. I don't think they need a specific reference on it. The one thing that the medical school would do is, oh, actually, no, I think I'm not saying that right. I remember in Bristol, right before my interviews, I had to give the details of the people I did my work experience with. And I think they must have double checked to see whether we've done it or not. So yeah, no, I think they do check it. I don't know about other universities, but at Bristol they did check, because we had to fill out a work experience form, and we had to fill out the details of our supervisors so that they went and checked whether we had actually done it, because I mentioned it in my personal statement and I spoke about it in my interviews as well. So I think they double check it. So yeah, I think they do. So I think maybe if you contact the person you did your work experience with, ask for a reference, or just say to them that when you get an interview, they might be contacted for a reference. That should be okay. What other unis did you apply for? So I did 2 London and 2 non-London unis just to maximize my chances of getting in. So I did Bristol and Cardiff as my non-London ones, and then I applied for King's College London and St George's in London for my London ones. Does English language grade really matter for medicine? I think GCSEs, yes. I think you need to get B or above or something like that. I can't remember. I don't know if it's changed now, or I don't know what. I think you guys have numbers now, 8 or 7 or above or something like that. I can't remember. You'd have to check the specific university website that you're applying for to see what they want. But yeah, at GCSE, I think they do matter, because Cardiff, for example, they grade you based on a point scale. So if you've got a certain number of A's or a certain number of A stars, you get 3. If you've got a certain number of A stars, you get 3 points. And then if you've got a certain number of A's, you get 2 points. And then if you've got B or below, you get if you've got B, you get 1 point. And then if you've got below that, you don't get any points. And then they add up all the points together, and then based on that, they give you interview offers. So for some universities, it does matter more than others, but you'd have to double check their website. Okay. I've got an exam at 2:30 p.m. Should I do a mock the day of? No. So a lot of people ask me if they should do a mock exam the day of their UCAT exam. No, it's not a good idea to do it, because you will burn yourself out. And imagine if you do that mock exam and you don't do as well as you'd have liked on the day of your test, you would just end up stressing yourself out. So my advice is don't do it. Maybe do one the day before or 2 days before, but don't do it the day of. Do universities accept online work experience if you don't get face-to-face? Yes, they do. I think now, because we're going back to face-to-face, you can try and get some last-minute work experience if you're able to arrange it. But if you're finding it really difficult, online work experience is treated just as equally as face-to-face ones. How do you provide a reference or evidence of work experience or volunteering? So you need to ask the person who was supervising you to write a short sort of paragraph about what you did there and how you were during your work experience. And you can keep a record of that with you on your computer, or you can tell the person who supervised you for those things that you're applying for medicine, so they may be contacted about references, and then they can expect a call or an email from the medical school. My sibling has a test on the same day but different time. Should I ask her what she got? Probably not. I would say don't sort of ask each other what you've got and everything, but just sort of, stay apart for that time when you're doing your UCAT, so that you're completely focused on your exam and not each other's. And then, yeah, it should be okay. I would say no, don't ask. Can I attach my certificates for online work experience with personal statement as an evidence? I don't think you can attach extra documents to your UCAS application. I think if the university asks for it, then show them it. But I don't think you don't have anywhere on the UCAS application where you can attach certificates to. But if they do ask for it, then you can show them. Yeah. I think now, so on a scale of 1 to 4, guys, now having done the session, how do you feel about decision making? Happy with it? Perfect. Okay, so I think more practice, you guys are more and more confident, and most of you have a bit of time before your exam to continue improving as well, so don't worry about it at all. Again, this is just the code for if you wanted to purchase one of these bundles. So I'll leave that on there for everyone to see if you did want to. No problem. Hopefully you guys can enjoy the rest of your weekend. And yeah, thanks for being really interactive. No problem. What did you take to your interview? Do you need to provide proof of experience, or only if they ask? So Bristol specifically asked us to bring proof of work experience. So I brought that in and I handed it in to them before my interview. They also needed us to fill out like a form, which was like a health questionnaire or something. So that was filled out, and but that actually I didn't have to bring it with me. That was given to me on the day of my interview, and then I filled it out before I went in. So it's dependent on the uni. But yeah, it was the work experience form that I had to fill out. Yeah. Do they have panel or MMI interview? In Bristol, it's MMI. And you've got the year I did it anyway, it's been 4 years, bearing in mind. It was 9 stations, but it might change. So the last 2 years it's been online, and it's online MMIs. Okay, so I'll end it there, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.